when I first started with it, I kept the
This is
sponge
Randy again.
in here.
This time, this video is going to give you a
with one
tour
hand, I'm
of my
operating a
homemade flat
sponge and I'm
lap
keeping the surface,
and all the capabilities that it
whatever the
has
surface is that I
and
have
how I
here,
put it together.
wet with
I
that
like to say that it
sponge.
was put
And
together
then
at an incredibly low cost of $10. And I'm going to show you exactly why I say that. What you see is the station that I set up when I'm using the flat lap. I use a regular folding work table to sit it on, and I have a high top chair that I use to sit. The flat lap's very heavy, and you're going to see why in a moment. So let's take a look at how it's put together and how it's used. Okay, got a little close here. But the components that were used to put the flat lap together were pieces of junk that were basically offered to me by neighbors or got found out in the yard. What you see here is covering a motor, and you can see the motor underneath there, is just a tool bin, your standard tool bin that you might buy. And I often I have several other of these tool bins under my workbench that you might have seen when you saw my workbench. And it just happened to be that I grabbed one of them in order to put this together. So we have the tool bin, excuse me, and the water component where all the water goes. This is a Christmas tree stand base. This Christmas tree stand was found with some steel components out in the yard of my neighbor's house, and he knew I liked to capture scrap steel for doing work when I'm working with my forge. And the scrap steel that was with that, he gave it to me. But he also gave me the stand that was with it. And so what you see is the bin from the water bin from the Christmas tree stands. And it's a very major component to the flat lap. Sitting on top of that is this is a component that I bought from Harbor Freight. It's a backing pad that has hooks for hook and loop sandpaper on top of it. It's a little bit soft, but not very. It's pretty rigid, and it has a 5/8 thread stem that you would normally put into a tool, a buffing tool that Harbor Freight sells. This item here costs about $9. I'll show you a picture of it in place so that you at Harbor Freight so that you can go and purchase it yourself if you want to. But this is where all the components for doing the work are attached into my flat lap. And this is the one component out of everything that you see here that I purchased just to build the flat lap. So $9. Everything else that you see here were scrap components, and it was put together to make this a very valuable and powerful flat lap. I'm going to set this aside, and what you see is in the Christmas tree pan, what I did is there was a center hole here, and I made that center hole a little larger, and then I glued with silicone glue a nylon extension in order to be able to give this pan the opportunity to hold water while polishing stone. And you see all around the Christmas tree bowl that I've marked what the maximum fill is, and that's to make sure that water does not go down above this tube that I've put in here. So I'm going to lift this pan off and show you more of what is here. See, you can see the hole in the bottom. It's very light. Christmas tree stand. What you see next is the base, the really working component of the flat lap. This piece, and I'm going to lift this off and get it out of the way so you can see a little bit more. This is the base to a trash compactor. It was a trash compactor that was given to me as not working by a neighbor, and so I decided to just strip it down, see how it was put together, and see if it had any components that would be useful to me to build something. I didn't have a flat lap in mind when I was given the trash compactor to take apart. So what you see, the trash compactor has a very heavy motor. This motor is bidirectional. It has a great deal of torque. When I'm polishing, you really have to hold on to your stones because it can launch them if you're not careful. But the main thing is when you're really trying to dig in on a very hard stone like an agate or something, in order to polish, you can press hard on this flat lap, and you don't burden the motor at all. You'll never stall this motor. So here you see the controls for the flat lap, and really all this is I just rewired the motor so that I had some control, and this is actually the original control knob to start the trash compacting cycle of the trash compactor. But I just remounted it to the base, rewired it so that you see it has the ability to start the trash compactor and stop the trash compactor. And also, I still have the ability right here. There's a little switch right here. That was the switch that was at the top of the trash compactor cycle. That when it reached one end or the other of the compression cycle, that it would change direction. I kept the switch in there. If I wanted to, I can hold that switch when I'm turning it on and change the direction of the spin of this spindle right here. But I don't do that because there's not really only one way that you want this to turn, and it's defined by the thread of the Harbor Freight hook and loop adapter that I showed you earlier. So just so you get a better idea, you see these two holes here. I'm going to show you a picture when I broke it down, and you see that those two holes are where the steel threaded rods extended from the base that were driven by the motor here, and those threaded rods had a weight with a a very large piston on the end of it that was as big as the trash space inside, and it's those rods that you see in the picture that would drive up and down in order to compact the trash. You see that I no longer have those in those holes. What I did was I took one of the poles that you saw, and I cut it off. That's where you see right here, and I threaded the spindle for the 5/8 hole for the hook and loop adapter from Harbor Freight. But in order to run this device in the center, like I wanted to, what I had to do, and I'm going to show you this, and it's heavy, but it's interesting to see. Underneath here here's the real drive of how this works. What you see is a bicycle belt chain that drives from a spindle on the motor to a spindle, the center spindle that I had mounted. Now you see the two holes on the side. What you see is that I've rerouted that one of these units that were on each side into the center, and before the chain would drive from the motor across one spindle and then across the other and then back down to the pulley on the motor. And there was even an additional component in there that was used to get the speed correct for the trash compactor. But all I did was break the chain, reset the chain, bring one of those bases in that I had cut off and threaded with the 5/8, and brought it back into the center, and that's how it's set up right now in what you see. Now, trying to figure out, okay, what did I have after I did that? I had a tachometer, and I measured the speed of the motor. This motor operates at about 1785 RPM. So what that gives me is a speed on the flat lap on that 6-inch adapter of about 1460 RPM. Actually, it's exactly 1460 RPM because I measured it with a optical tachometer. Almost there. So pretty cool device. I always thought you might have noticed that right here where the spindle comes through, it's just a bearing. It's a sleeve bearing. So that sleeve bearing gets a lot of operation at this speed and with the tension on the bicycle chain. So that I expected that wouldn't last very long. Well, I've been using this device for about 1.5 years now, and I've done a lot of work on it, and it's just hanging in there. The only thing I've had to do is keep that chain greased. It's kind of messy. You can see what it does to your hands. And one time I had to tighten the chain, which I have the ability to do with some slop in the mounting of the rod, because bicycle chains get loose over time, and you have to tighten them up. So last thing, so that gives you gives us a flat lap that spins with a bucket of water around it, and I'm going to demonstrate that in a little bit. But what about the fact that you really want to, you want this to be a wet operation? Hi, so when I first started using this flat lap, the way that I would work it is I would keep a sponge like this in the flat lap, and it would stay wet, and I would use one hand to keep the surface wet, whatever surface it is that I'm working with here, and with my other hand I would be able to work with the stone and using the surface for shaping that stone. But I wanted to be able to use both hands to be able to manipulate the stone. So I had a friend who gave me one of these Bissell floor scrubbers, that sprays water onto the floor and has a vacuum on it, and it spins and cleans the floor. And I took that apart, and one of the things that I was able to get out of that was a small pump. And here, if you look inside the motor cover, you see that pump that I took from that Bissell floor cleaner, and I attached some irrigation hose to it, and the irrigation hose goes back to the Christmas tree tray. And for controlling it, what you see here is it was a 24 volt DC motor. So since this motor is 115 volts AC, all I needed to do was tap in to the 115 volts when it comes on, and I used a regular old, see if I can get where you can see it, 115 volt AC to 24 volt DC converter, and wired it through a switch, this switch right here, which gives me the ability to turn the pump on and off. And it's wired in such a way that when I turn the motor on, the 115 volts is applied to the control circuit of the pump. Now the pump, then, being mounted in the motor cover, sits like this, and what you see is that the input side, the suction side of the pump, sits on the bottom of the pan of water in the Christmas tree pan, and it has a little screen on it so it doesn't pick up debris, and that keeps it onto in the water. And then the output side of the pump comes out through these irrigation components and pumps the water directly onto whatever the surface is that I'm using. So now that gives me the ability to use both my hands, because I'm pumping water continuously on top of the polishing surface, whatever I'm using. So this is a hook adapter. Now, what am I using? How do I use this flat lap that I paid $10 to put together? Well, what I have here is a set of, what you see is a set of diamond surfaces for flat lap. I've got everything from 80 grit to 3000 grit here. And on every single one of them, I've mounted the hook side, a very strong hook and loop component, so that I can then put this device, this diamond disc, onto the hook and loop adapter that I've got there, and use any one of them from 80 to 3000 grit flat diamond surfaces for shaping discs, shaping cabochons and stones. That gives me a hard flat surface to do the shaping with. And then in addition to that, I from Harbor Freight, you can buy, let me get one here for you. You can buy these adapters where they're loop on one side, and on the other side, you can see I've got a piece on here. On the other side, they're hook, and I can set these right on here, right on there. I've got my water. Now I have a cushion surface that I can work with when I'm shaping stones with any kind of cab that I want to put together. Right now I've got a piece hooked to it just for demonstration. This is a piece of 10,000 grit sandpaper that's loop sandpaper that I can mount onto that adapter, and I have a huge huge stack of these, everything from 60 grit to 10,000 grit. The lower grits are silicon carbide, so that they do a really great job on shaping and stones and being able to work and try to keep scratches out of stones. As you can see, this gives me a lot of flexibility in putting cabs together now. Any kind of shape, I can do curves. I can even do odd shapes on this flat lap. All these I've put into the video. I've flashed various sources for all of these components that I'm using, and if anybody wants to put something like this together, you'll know where to get them. So this is my $10 flat lap. It's very effective. I've been using it for a while. I'm very satisfied with it. Someday when I grow up and decide that I'm going to use a regular cabbing machine, when I decide I'm going to put the money out, or when this device stops working, I'll pass this on to somebody. But in our next video, we're actually going to make a cab using this flat lap, and I think you'll find that very interesting. So my $10 flat lap. I hope you all enjoyed it. Bye.